Live.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are in the world, and welcome to another show of the We Talk Chelsea podcast, the podcast created by three Sunday League players. And unfortunately, one of them, Tom, the usual presenter, as you can probably tell by my amateur presenting, isn't available tonight, unfortunately. So we have got a special guest, Peter, on the show for us today. So thank you so much, Peter, for donating your time. And we hope that you will have some interesting points to come across, and that's what it's all about, right? We're all here to express our opinions. It's We Talk Chelsea. It's all the game. Obviously, we're off the back of probably the best performance, I think, as far as I was concerned, since the Boehly era. I would actually argue. I think it was right up there. Obviously, it felt a little bit like a loss. I'm going to put it straight to Tem just to give his opinion on the game, and then obviously, Tem, if you want to ask Peter straight afterwards, and you can ask me straight after that as well. So Tem, what did you think, mate?
Pre-game, looking at it, I was, as you know, very pessimistic. I didn't expect Chelsea to get anything from that game. But after seeing the whole performance, I would say I left that game feeling a bit more positive about the team overall. I would say it was a very, very tough game. We played very, very well, which I didn't expect. I thought we gave Arsenal a run for their money for most of the game. Unfortunately, we'll touch upon the mistakes that happened in the game, which cost us the result. The kicker was that we played so well and only left with a point. I suppose our best two performances, probably Liverpool and Arsenal, we've left with a point bitterly. But at the same time, if you play well against those top teams, it shows that you can reach those levels and you can play against the best. It's just now about that consistency, I suppose. I think we just need to start playing against every team at that level. If we do, we win most of the games. I mean, we've dropped silly points this season. You saw against Forest and other teams we've played where we just looked like we weren't interested and we didn't get going. And I guess Pochettino deserves big praise too, because I think the changes he's made since late August have really helped us start picking up some form. So yeah, I'll throw that question to Peter. How did you think the game went?
Pre-game, I actually felt that Chelsea will have a good game against Arsenal. So I wasn't so surprised with the result, although it feels like a loss. But then I actually think ending the game with a draw, there was some positive that we could hold on to. And when we look about the squad, the manager in particular, it shows that he can rub with the big coaches in the league tactically. When to switch things up. And although speaking in hindsight, we would have said that the subs weren't that great. Immediately made that sub. Sanchez made that error, and the Gusto Lacadesica approach to Trossard equalizer. So all in all, I think it was a fair game.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'd actually, I'd agree with that completely. I'd resonate that completely. I think overall, over the 90 minutes, it probably was the fair result to an extent. If you actually look at the match stats, Arsenal actually looked probably slightly better, believe it or not. Obviously, when you're watching it with a blue tinted glasses, as I say, it can look it can look as if we really dominated it. I think it was just disappointing that we couldn't see the game out. But with every young team, this is a really common thing. I mean, Arteta had this problem when he took over at Arsenal, where young teams, they can't see games out as much. Klopp had it at Liverpool. Ten Hag had it. They call it bottling or bottlers and all this sort of language. But really, it's just it's a coaching thing where you get to, especially 2-0 is such a funny result in this league. You get to 2-0 and the one goal and it can really change things. And often it's against the run of play, which it was in this case, a little bit of luck, a mistake, and suddenly Arsenal really, fired up. And one thing I will say is, thank God we didn't lose it, because I think that we could have done. There was plenty of time, plenty of time to lose that match after Trossard scored, and we just about got it over the line to get that draw. And I think even though, yes, looking back, it feels like a loss, it could have been a loss. And I think that that damage in terms of mentally going into more of these sort of fixtures, that could have been make or break. And I think overall, there were more positives than negatives in that match. So yeah, I thought it was pretty good. I mean, before the match, obviously the lineup, we had a discussion last week on this channel about how we thought Pochettino might line up. It was pretty consistent, actually. Well, actually, no, it probably wasn't. There was, I don't think anyone quite predicted that we would start with no striker. That was one thing. The Gusto Reece James was another thing. And all of these decisions seemed to pay off. Tem, what did you make of the starting lineup, the formation, and so on, and how much do you think Pochettino has to be commended actually for that ballsy starting lineup essentially, and a masterclass really in terms of it seemed to throw Arsenal completely off the scent?
Yeah, I think I genuinely do think that it was a bit of a masterclass in the sense that he knew what the strengths of Arsenal were, and he went with it like a box midfield. I think it was just to make that Chelsea team really narrow, and it was something I was looking at it first when I did not expect Jackson not to start. I thought Jackson was a nailed on starter, and I thought Mudryk wouldn't start either due to his what we all know, seeing his poor defensive ability. So I was surprised he went with that formation, but I think the plan was to keep Arsenal as frustrated as possible and then try counter attack them with the pace and speed that we have, because I think we're quite a good team in terms of transitional counters. I just don't think we've seen the full fruitions of that come to light, and it was a shame because I think against Arsenal what we did was invited them a bit too much on, where we didn't play out of the press. We obviously, the wet surface and things like that didn't help, but looking at that, I thought we were definitely looking to play on the counter attack, and yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, but I did feel optimistic when I saw that there was no number 9, because I thought just before the game kicked off, that midfield of Arsenal needed to be locked down. And I suppose playing out with a recognised striker and adding more players in that midfield space meant that we were going to look to pounce upon their sort of mistakes, maybe when they're trying to build up play through our midfield, and we would, attack them when it hurt. So yeah, I don't know what you think, Peter. Do you agree or?
I agree with you because I was actually surprised not seeing Jackson in the starting 11. I was so surprised. I was almost as livid as every fan base could be on Saturday, because I thought, okay, Jackson could actually offer us a lot in that match, maybe in the first half. But immediately the match started, I actually felt, okay, I think I'm liking what I'm saying, because Jackson and Palmer was a bit handful for Saliba and Gabriel. I think they were all over the place in the first few minutes, and we capitalized with the penalty that Palmer converted. And judging the full match on a full scale, I felt Conor Gallagher had a good game. He had a good game against Declan Rice. I didn't think I saw Declan Rice throughout the game, except for the goal that he scored. So I think it was a good game, all in all, a good game.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, isn't it, that Arsenal's key players, which I would argue, or the spine at least of the team, Saka, Rice, Martinelli, these guys, barely noticed they were on the pitch. Some of these guys, they really didn't affect the game. And I sort of said it last week that I thought it was going to be a huge game for Enzo and a huge game for Gallagher, but it seemed like they just nullified the midfield. They actually were. It was quite ballsy. They did nullify the midfield just by being busy, basically, just by annoying them. Especially Gallagher. I mean, he's that kind of player. I personally, playing football, he would just make you rush a pass. He can probably create. He probably does a lot more than he's given. He probably forces a lot of mistakes just because he's so sort of energetic and in your face. He doesn't necessarily get a tackle, but he will be on you. He'll make you, make decisions quicker than your brain can deal with it, if you like. So, on the first half, Tem, obviously we came out the traps pretty well, I thought. What did you think of the sort of the first 45?
Yeah, the first half, again, I think you messaged me straight away when the game started. I asked you, what do you think? And you said, we're actually playing pretty good and now it's time to capitalize on it. Because we know, and I think we've seen a lot with Chelsea over the last 12 months, we have this period where we play really good football, maybe not score, or, we don't capitalize on the amount of chances we have. And I suppose in this scenario we were a bit lucky, but again, it's about starting well and making that mark and consistently doing it over 90 minutes. And I think we saw that in the first half where we really looked like we were up for this game. And like I say, I couldn't put a foot wrong on anyone in that first half. I thought everyone knew the game plan. Pochettino drilled them well to start how we did, and we looked like we were really on it. So, yeah, I think first half-wise, I have no complaints with any single player. I thought Cucurella was absolutely excellent in that first 20 minutes. He sort of clattered into Saka a few times to show him, like, I'm not here to be messed around with. You're not going to have an easy day against me. Same as Gusto with Martinelli. Early on, you saw Martinelli sort of struggling where to take him. He kept going on his outside, which I know Martinelli usually is a player that likes to drift on his inside side, but he knew that Gusto had that side sort of locked down, and it helped with Caicedo kind of coming over and Cole Palmer, which helped us defensively at times. Although I thought Raheem Sterling didn't do quite well coming back as much as Cole Palmer did, but even so, like, you saw that first 20 minutes where even Jorginho, Rice, they couldn't quite pick out the balls to Odegaard. He was pretty much invisible in that first half. He didn't have his best games. And when we played Arsenal last season, the big threat was that Odegaard was able to get a lot of time and space. And I think Pochettino pre-game already knew that. That's what Gallagher did very well at. He closed that space out where, nothing's going through that middle. That's where Arsenal operate best, and getting the ball out wide to Saka from middle spaces, giving that half space to Odegaard and players like Rice and whoever else it may be, Partey at times, not allowing that early pass in and just frustrating them. And I think it was the perfect game plan the first half. I think we did nothing wrong. So, yeah, I'll throw that to Peter. What did you think?
Yeah, I think the first half epitomized what we've complained about for the last 12, 18 months as a fan base, which was profligacy in front of goal. Because I think we could have been 2-3-0 up in the first half, but aside from that, every other thing was perfect. I think Cucurella had a monstrous game that day. He kept a lead on Saka throughout the first half, even the second half. Aside from the moment that Saka picked out the pass to Trossard, Gusto had a wondrous game too. They kept passing the ball from one wing to the other. They couldn't break us down. Caicedo, Enzo, Gallagher was so good, so good. He kept a lead throughout the game. On Declan Rice and Jorginho. I was surprised. I was wondering if Jorginho was even in the game. Not until he was subbed out. I kept wondering if Jorginho was in the game. So, aside from the profligacy in front of goal, I think it was a perfect game plan from Poch. To to keep them out, shut them out. They had no time to breathe.
Yeah, and obviously the big moment in the first half was the penalty, which I was pretty I was very convinced at the time it was a penalty, just based upon recent decisions in the Premier League with the VAR. It was fairly obvious it was going to go for a review, and it was fairly obvious it was going to be a penalty. Crucial moment, and obviously deliberations between Sterling and Palmer, which I think was a bit of a overreaction from the Sky Sports, which is where I watched the game, and they made a bit of a song and dance of it. But I think it's actually nice to see two players competing for a penalty. I want the goal. I want to, I'd rather that than two players not wanting to take it. Let's put it that way. And Palmer slotted it away. I thought he had a fantastic game. But moving back to the penalty, Tem, what do you reckon? I think Arsenal fans, from what I can see, probably. I don't think there's too many complaints from what I can see, but I might be wrong. I'm not massively on social media, but what did you reckon, Tem?
Yeah, it's one of those decisions, I suppose. Playing as a centre back, it's something I would not like given against me. Personally, I think it's ridiculous that the ball has moved maybe a yard off Mudryk's head, and hit his hand. I do understand his hands were quite high up in the air, which is why it's going to be deemed as a penalty. I suppose it's the jumping technique that Saliba did all wrong. So in that sense, I do think that it's in some way justified, because what he's done wrong there is that he's almost jumped too late and used his arms to sort of levitate himself up in the air and not brought them back quite down quick enough. And I suppose as a professional footballer in this day and age, you should keep your hands down as much as possible. So in that sense, I have no complaints, but it's just the motion of the I suppose the pace the ball's traveling at, the distance it's traveling at. Those things I don't think get accounted to much in VAR, in my opinion. Anyway, I think when you start freeze framing things, everything looks obviously 10 times. Everything is 10 times slower, but you know what I mean. Like, it looks like, oh, you had 10 years to get out the way of that. It's like looking at a car coming at you 100 miles an hour. You wouldn't see it coming before it's like right next to you, sort of thing. But in slow motion, it looks like you had 10 years to jump out of the way. But realistically, we know if you play something at full time, at full pace, it's just not that simple. And for me, it's a grey area where I don't think it's clear and obvious, so I wouldn't give it. And because the referee did not give it, I think he kind of lent on VAR to make that decision for him. Because if you actually see when the moment happened, he sort of froze and just sort of stared right at the centre back and sort of trying to analyse the situation. I think he was hesitant to give the decision straight away. Maybe he wanted play to carry on and then VAR to correct the decision. So again, it's kind of taking the power out of the referee's hands, but I think he made the right call there by not giving the penalty. So yeah, I don't know if you agree, Peter. What do you think?
Yeah, from a defender's point of view, I think it is harsh, but then that was a goal bound foul, and I think it was a penalty. But then I think the VAR is there to aid the decision of the referee. So I was surprised that it was hesitant in making the decision, but thankfully there was VAR, because I felt he wouldn't have given the pen if there wasn't a VAR to aid him with his decision. So it is harsh. Yeah, it is harsh, but then it is a penalty.
Yeah, and look, our defenders are bound by those rules as well. So we could argue that Gusto could have handballed it when he got out of position, and that might have been a penalty instead of a goal, and maybe Sanchez saves it. I mean, it sounds stupid, but we're bound by the same rules as Arsenal are, and we're bound to the same. It's not like these are the rules that they know. I will. The only thing I do feel sorry for is it's just like it's very. I mean, nowadays I'm slightly overweight. I'm not quite as aerodynamic, shall we say, as I was when I was younger. But when you learn how to jump in any sport, in football, or even just jumping on a box, your hands are as important as your legs. I mean, I think everyone knows that. You have to be able to balance. You have to be able to project yourself, and even if you're just jumping on boxes, your arms are as important for the just for the stability and stuff like that. So when Saliba was growing up and playing football and learning football, he would have been told to jump with his arms. And this is coming. I mean, it sounds stupid. When I started watching football, players didn't put their hands behind their back, for example. When a cross is about to come in, or they can anticipate a cross, they didn't used to do that. That's only kind of started probably over the last 10 years, if that you see that as a and obviously with VAR, you have to. You'd be an idiot not to do that. But obviously, this is just how the game evolves, I suppose.
Yeah, and it's something
50 years ago, the offside rule wasn't around, so there you go.
Yeah, so it's something I wanted to mention. I don't know if you, well, I suppose you guys remember if Ivanovic famously, he used to have this position where he would defend a lot of the times with his hands like held behind his back. And it was sort of to dismay the referee from seeing it as a flailing hand. So he would basically grab both of his hands, put them behind his back as he's defending crosses. And yeah, I think it is that thing sort of, and you see a lot in Champions League games or European games where someone will just kick the ball at someone's hand and the referee's like, oh, handball or penalty or whatever. And I think it does make these defenders scared, where they have to keep their hands close to their body, or maybe they know as soon as the ball hits the hand from any sort of distance, whether that's a yard away, 2 yards away, 10 yards away, nowadays it's going to be given as a penalty. So in that sense, I can sympathize with defenders where they think, what can I do, sort of thing. It doesn't matter.
But do you know, like sorry to butt in, Tim, but do you not think, like, as the game evolves, if that's the standard now, attackers have a huge advantage with headers because they can use their hands. They only risk a free kick in the box which is basically just a goalkeeper who's just going to take that and lump it out. And yet the defenders have all the risk, if that makes sense, because it's in the box. They're going to give away a penalty. That's essentially the punishment. And an attacker, if he accidentally handballs it in the box, it's just a free kick. So essentially all the attackers will be waving their arms around, does that make sense? And they'll be able to use their arms to project. I mean, if you watch Ronaldo, for example, in my opinion, for his height, is one of the best headers of the ball for a guy of his height and his stature. The arm movement is really half the game, isn't it? And the way he leaps, I mean, it's the arm movement, it's that projection. And obviously, if a defender's against him, why would he risk, flattening his arm, if you know what I mean, unless he's, a foot taller than him. I don't know. That's what I think. But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that I agree with you. I think I agree with you. It's definitely a grey area that probably needs to be addressed somehow in the game, and maybe over the next few years we'll see how VAR is going to impact it more. Will we see a lot? I don't know what the data is, but I think we'll definitely see a lot more ball penalties be given for handball nowadays than maybe even fouls, I suppose, because it just seems so common where, I don't know, it's just like a handball every week we see, or someone the ball's hit the hand at a silly angle, or someone's falling to the floor and the ball's just sort of slapped them as they're kind of trying to make a block or coming out to make themselves as big as possible. Because, I suppose we used to see, if you've been watching Premier League for 10 plus years, you'll see where defenders have come out and it's just hit them along the hand. Or even last season, if you remember against West Ham, where who was it? Was it
Thomas Susek.
Yeah, he practically saved it like a keeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to add your thoughts, Peter, go ahead. Sorry.
No, yeah, I'm just telling you the player's name that it was Thomas Susek. He
Mhm.
practically grabbed the ball with his hand in the box.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So and there you go. It's like like you say. But look, that's an Arsenal problem, and
yeah,
or it was an Arsenal problem. So anyway, we move into the second half. And obviously the worry was, and I agree here with Peter. The biggest worry was we didn't capitalise, and Arteta might have done some magic, from the bench. And obviously he took, was it Zinchenko took off at half
yeah.
time, was it? I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he
Just
took
that.
Zinchenko off at half time. And obviously
So,
we came, I think if I sort of remember rightly, they were pretty, they were kind of all over us for the first 10 or so minutes before Mudryk came up with the goods. But yeah, Peter, what was your thoughts going into that second half? Did you think we needed any substitution or any change, or were you, obviously, I don't know, it was a great first half, but for me, I was quite worried actually at 1-0.
Mhm.
What did you think, Peter?
yeah. Going to the second half, I felt we didn't need to change anything. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, but when the game started, when Tomiyasu was brought on, I felt Sterling should have been more on the right than in the middle. Vice versa. So I felt starting the second half, Palmer was more on the right than in the middle. So I think him and Sterling should have shuffled more. But then it was 10 minutes into the second half that we got the second goal. The Modric and the old fan base and the other fan base were saying that he didn't mean that, he meant that. I mean, I don't care. All I care about was the 2-0 lead. So aside from that, I think we were better. We controlled the game better in the second half, except from the Sanchez error. Although there were
Yeah,
some
I
times that,
think, yeah, with the Sanchez error, let's.
yeah,
I was going to say the whole second. I think we should do just up to 75 minutes at the moment, and then
yeah, exactly.
because it's day and night. That's ultimately, I think, but and that's my mistake. But yeah, I mean, Peter, and up until that point, what did you think? I mean, I thought it was pretty good up until then.
Yeah. Up until that point, I think we were good. Although there were some times that we couldn't beat their press. They forced us wide instead of going through the middle. I saw Caicedo a couple times coming through the right hand side, taking the ball and putting it out for Gusto. They forced our hand, but then we were okay up until the Sanchez error. And after the Sanchez error, they just capitalized on our shaky. I felt we were shaky after we considered that first goal, and it just brought down nail upon us right after that moment.
Yeah, Tem, out this half time, obviously feeling pretty good. Going into that second 45, what were you thinking? And then off, up until basically the 75th minute, what were you thinking, mate?
Yeah, at halftime, I would actually say I was really nervous just because a lot of that time in that first half, I felt like we really were playing back against the wall, especially after that first goal went in. I thought we we tried so hard just not to concede, and I suppose that second goal came at the right time because I don't know if you remember in the first half there was times Zinchenko was coming all the way to the other side to try stop our counter attacks. There was a couple of one or two times where he came over to no. There was a time he fouled Mudryk. I remember all the way on the right hand side, and I was thinking, what are you doing? No, on our left hand side, obviously their right hand side, and it's something Gary Neville alluded to, like sort of what are you doing, sort of there, and it showed like their frustration, I suppose, to try win the ball high up the field, and what we kept doing in response was we would get back possession. It would go to Colwell. Colwell would look like he was going to pass it forward, and he would pass it back to Sanchez. Sanchez would then long ball it or hoof it up the pitch, but there was absolutely no target to hit. And most of the time, Saliba and Gabriel just took it out of the sky, played it back, and recycled. And if you know anything about playing football as you have done, when you're doing that constantly, it becomes more of a mental game of how much can you keep the pressure up. Do you know what I mean? You are physically tired, but you're more mentally tired because you're sort of looking around everywhere and thinking, "Oh, we've got to reset again." You know, the ball's coming straight back at us, so you've got to be super sharp and ready. And I suppose that when we scored that second goal, it was sort of like, okay, we've got a cushion now. We don't have to defend as deep now. And I think it's sort of it's something I think you will see with a team that's not so experienced in knowing what to do when you get to those positions. And it was something I was completely worried about because I was thinking, oh, maybe this is the turnaround in fortune where we sort of learn this experience now, where we think don't give them anything, because I think that's the most frustrating thing when we were 2-0 up, we just looked like we were going to see the game out, and obviously we're going to come up to it. But at that point, I don't think I had any qualms. I thought Jorginho, again, like Peter said, invisible that game. Zinchenko invisible, Odegaard invisible, Saka invisible. Martinelli was probably the only threatening player I thought on their team. He was the one who got past Gusto a few times, whether it was inside or outside, but mainly on the outside. And Jesus had nothing to play off again. So really, I thought we nullified them completely there. That and I want you guys to talk about that Mudryk goal. What did you guys think when that goal went in?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'll go first on that one. I mean, it was out of nothing. Clearly, it was brilliant, beautiful, because it was Mudryk. I think that was a big goal just for him on a personal level and for the fans, because and against Arsenal, obviously that helps. It was almost written in the stars for him to score a goal like that. And I don't think he meant it. And whatever he says, I don't think he meant it at all. But if he wants to say he can, he will. I mean, if you look at if I've watched it back a few times, he's looking in the box for someone, but maybe he realised that there's no point in putting a cross in because no one can head the ball, and that isn't, again, something that you can allude to, is that if you look at that lineup, there's no one probably Palmer's fairly tall, isn't he? I'm guessing he's probably the only one who's
6 foot.
Yeah, but that's relatively small at this level, and not small, but it's not a concern for most defenders. But yeah, I mean, I thought that was out of the blue. But yeah, it's the what happened next, I think, was the real crux of it. But yeah, Peter, do you want to just talk us through what you thought of the Mudryk goal, and then also the 75th minute goal?
Yeah, so I've watched it back quite a couple of times, and what stood out for me in that goal was that, people kept saying he didn't mean it, which I find very amusing, because Raya was out of his line. Even if you say that it was a cross, if that was a cross, it would still have ended in a goal, because it was way out of his line. And Pochettino said his assistant were telling Mudryk before the game that Raya always comes out of his line, that if he can chip him, he should. Mudryk confirmed this also. And looking at it, aside from watching it real time, I've watched it quite a couple of times, and I felt immediately he meant it. Even if he didn't mean it, I mean, at the point, who cares? Against Arsenal, got him, and Mudryk scoring that kind of goal,
Yeah,
we're in the euphoria of that.
And it's an Arsenal problem. But then obviously we were cruising after that, and then that one mistake. I think a lot would argue that Sanchez had it coming. But what did you think, Peter? Did you think it was all on Sanchez? It's funny actually. With Tom, who normally joins us, thinks there's an element to, is it Gallagher? He thought may have been at fault for
Yeah, for not receiving the pass. Yeah,
and not receiving the pass. Have you watched it back a few times? I can see where he's coming from, but what did you think, Peter, on that one?
No, was it Enzo at the tip of the edge of the box, or was
yeah,
it Gallagher? Enzo was at the tip of the box, right?
yeah.
Enzo, yeah, go on, Tim.
It was
Yeah,
Enzo.
yeah,
Enzo was supposed to control the ball, and I think Gallagher was in the half turn as he was going to receive the pass as
yeah.
well.
You know, looking at the video, Declan Rice was behind Gallagher, and
Yeah,
immediately that pass was passed, Declan
Yeah,
Rice had to run, had to run and miss the ball and eat it immediately. So I don't see it as a Sanchez error, honestly. But then the more you look at it, you feel it is an error because he passed the ball to beat the Arsenal press, hoping that Gallagher would come to receive the ball, which made
yeah.
Enzo to leave the ball at the tip of the at the box, and it went straight to Declan Rice's foot, and he hit the ball once.
My
yeah,
argument on that would be Gallagher did ask for the ball. There's no doubt about that. You can see him but Gallagher is in space, but
Yeah,
the pass is misplaced regardless. So Gallagher either couldn't get to it, or even if there was no call from I don't know when when you name a ball, don't you? If you're the goalkeeper, you go Enzo, you pass the ball. Gallagher
yeah,
looked like he was sort of in two minds whether to try and outstretch his leg, which obviously meant the touch would be awful, and we all know Gallagher's touch isn't the best at the best of
yeah,
times. He would have potentially lost possession that way, or he leaves it for Enzo, who he probably knew was behind him, but also because the pass was that misplaced, he assumed probably it was for Enzo. And Enzo, if Sanchez meant to pass it to Enzo, it's all Sanchez's fault because you don't pass the ball to someone who's got who's being marked. Basically, that's basic. So I think Sanchez it's just a misplaced pass. I think he meant to play it to Gallagher. Was there much pressure on the ball, Tim? Can you remember? I can't think, but was there actually pressure on the ball that you had to?
no,
Could you have controlled it? I don't know.
yeah. I should have got a freeze frame up, so just so that everyone obviously could see that pass. But I'm pretty sure he had an option out wide, and Cucurella was the free man there. What annoyed me about that is because we've seen that with Sanchez sometimes, especially I think it was twice against Brighton, where he's tried like to punch some ball through that midfield quite quickly and swiftly, and you just think at that point against a team like Arsenal, it's all about like Jose just put in the comments. I believe it was Jose said game maturity, and you're 2-0 up at that time, and you think, well, what's been working all game? We've been hoofing it long, and just avoiding pressure, let Arsenal build up slowly, or however they can't break us down. We've got Jackson now, although he may not be the best target man, but he has half a chance of winning the ball or, putting that defense under pressure. Go long, either go long or go out wide and then go long. Do you know what I mean? Like you don't need to. I know everyone's probably a bit high on adrenaline and thinking, yeah, we're 2-0 up now. Let's try express ourselves and gain confidence from this. But I don't think this is the game to do that. I really don't. I think a game like Brentford, where you're 2-0 up, that's when you try things like that, and maybe they pay off. But a team like Arsenal, where that they're pretty much gunning for the league, no pun intended, but they're pretty much there and abouts as league contenders. They'll finish first, second, or third this season. Teams like that are way ahead of us in terms of precision, in terms of yeah, like Dale said, it's 100% pass meant for Enzo, and it's sort of just like it undoes that whole performance. And Arsenal have played as bad as as they have, and escaped to the point somehow, and that goal just gave them momentum to think, yeah, we're not out of this. And it is, I hate to admit it, but it's kind of a hallmark of potential champions that you see, where they've played awful quite a few times this season and escaped with it. I know Chelsea fans will say, "Oh, Arsenal, they're not as good as they seem. But the thing is, they haven't lost a game. If you're playing as bad as they are, that game, if we played how they played, do we leave away with a point? That's what I want to know.
We would have
Do many teams. You saw Man City against even Arsenal. They had no sniff and they lost.
Yeah, I mean, and another point that I make is with this team, people forget when was the last time we were 2-0 up and we had to see out a game. I mean, obviously Fulham away. Okay, that's one. Sorry, I walked into that one quite badly, but before that, certainly we've been on a hell of a run where we've barely scored. So 2 goals in a game is one thing, and against a quality opposition that can punish your mistakes. That we just haven't experienced that. I mean, Fulham didn't cause us, any real problems, to be honest. So I think that has to be taken into account. But although for as many positives as Arsenal can take from the match, I think we can as well in our position, in our relevant positions in the table and aspirations for the season, and that's the way that I look at it. But so obviously after that we thought we were cruising. I don't even know why I remind myself of this game sometimes, but we thought we were cruising. That happened. Reece James came on, and this is what was funny. He came on just before the goal, didn't he? Is that right? Or just after the goal? It was almost the same. It was the same minute as the goal, and I can't. I think it was just before the second Arsenal goal. Who did he come on for though? It would have been Gusto, wouldn't it? So it must have been after.
No. It was Cole Palmer.
Palmer.
So the thing is Declan Rice scored. They bought on Havertz for Odegaard and Trossard.
Yeah.
And I think what happened is that they might have played it long, and I think Havertz won a knockdown, and then it went over to Saka, and then Saka crossed it into Trossard. But quickly, I want to touch on, what do you guys think of Jackson's performance when he came on, and especially that chance he had 1v1 against Raya? Do you think he could have done better, or is that me just being harsh?
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I think he could have done better, but then I don't want to be harsh on him because immediately he came on, he had that chance, and we've seen quite some players come on immediately and they had to take a penalty and they missed. They haven't had a run of games. We saw it happen with England at the last Euros when was it Rashford that was brought on, or Sancho?
Yeah,
They were brought on to take the penalty and both of them lost. So I don't want to be too harsh, but he could have done better.
Yeah. Okay.
What
do you think of his overall performance?
The overall performance of Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fair, not what it has been given since the season started. I don't know if that was because of the injury he had, I felt it was because of the injury he couldn't start the game on Saturday. So maybe it was because of the injury, or maybe it's just a fatigue or something else. But I think it was, if I'm to grade it, maybe 40-45, because it was not near to what he's been giving us since the season started, even though it hasn't been 100 or a 90. But then, performing at a 75-80 level and you are dropping a 45 is not that good for that kind of match on Saturday.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's I think he's still. I think people do have to remember we're only how many games? 10 games into the season, if that. So it's still very early days, and he hasn't been available for 3 games or so of that. So it's still very early, and I think it looks like Palmer's going to be a permanent fixture in this team. Sterling more than likely. So and probably Mudryk. I think those 3, it seems, are going to be the sort of guys who are going to give him the assists and that sort of stuff. So he's got to get used to it. Do I think he's the long-term solution? Probably not. But ultimately, he's a pretty good player to come off the bench. If we somehow manage to convince a world-renowned striker to join us. But yeah, what did you think, Tim? Obviously, you asked that question for a reason, so sure you've got an opinion.
I just thought that chance maybe showed, I suppose, his lack of sometimes composure in front of goal. But then again, that's me being harsh, because I just think that's something we desperately need at the time. It's just someone who's cool and collected in front of goal, and I think Jackson's not quite it. So I can't really blame him for not being that player, because again, he hasn't played too much football. He hasn't got that experience to know when and what to do. So again, I think it's more just my frustration of. I think I've mentioned to you, Charlie, many times that we just need a killer in front of goal. We just need it. And you see, like I was saying, like teams like Man United, who got to top four last season, where they finished comfortably in top four, although they don't have a great squad. It was just, they get goals. Casemiro chips in with goals. Bruno Fernandes chips in with goals. Rashford obviously gets a lot of their goals as well. So it just shows you that you don't necessarily need a great squad to get top four. You just need to get goals. And I think it's again what I keep saying. We can play as good as we like, but you see, Man United, they'll have 90-minute performances of absolute rubbish, and they'll get away with a result where you'll think that you'll see on on Soccer Saturday or whatever, Man United are doing this, that. Next second, you see Rashford's got an equaliser, Bruno Fernandes scores the win, and you're thinking, how did they escape with that? And my frustration of Saturday was, are we going to see more performances where we play really well and don't come out with the result we want? Or is this now a building block to be like, let's put those good performances to actual results, I suppose. So yeah. Anyway, you guys can add on to that.
I mean, I think that's just going to take time. That's obvious, isn't it? With all young teams, and we've gone across this as a whole. It will take time to get performances into results, but performances we were missing performances and results last season. So if we've got one of them, then that's half the battle. And I will say one thing: I don't know whether we're better or worse than last season in terms of quality, but I think in terms of effort and work ethic, this is just a much more likable team at the moment, and we're getting to know them. It takes time. Again, as a fan, we're getting to know them, but let alone the managers. So, but they're just a bit more likable now, and they're just a bit more work rate. And I honestly do think Gallagher's kind of at the heart of that. But look, moving back onto the match, because obviously time is of essence. Trossard equaliser. We've sort of touched on that. I think everyone's in agreement. Gusto was at fault there. I don't really know what else to touch on there. But after that, was anyone sort of? I mean, I personally was quite impressed with the way that we actually saw it out to be just a draw. I had a really sneaky suspicion we were going to be like Carney did all those years ago, where it was 3-2 in 10 minutes. And just to get that draw. Peter, were you sort of at the end of it? Were you sort of relieved in some respects that we just managed to hold it out for the draw and recovered somewhat and managed to just shut up shop and just took what we got, which was a point, and it went from there.
Yeah. To be honest, I was relieved immediately the match was finished, and rightly so, because almost immediately Trossard got the equalizer. We saw Nketiah almost had the third goal for Arsenal. I mean, I was about to lose myself of my seat. I was like, bro, coming from 2 goals down and going up in the space of 2 minutes is actually crazy, I was relieved that the game finally ended and we got a draw, even though we deserved more in that game. So I was relieved, but then it was so painful to watch. So painful.
Yeah. Similar emotions, I'm guessing.
I think it was more of a feeling of deflation, but when you have a bad thought in your head, and you sort of don't want to imagine it to be true, sort of thing. You know what I mean? Like you kind of like it's
Exactly.
coming.
No,
But
give me an
you don't
example,
want it to
Temu,
come.
in your real life. Well, that
Okay,
your car's broken down, but you keep trying it, and you believe that one day it'll just start, but no, you still have to take it to the garage. That sort of thing.
Yeah. You know you're gonna need to pay that hefty engine bill or something to repair your car or whatever, you know. And it was just like you saw it coming. You just didn't want it to happen. You just really did not want it to happen. And I suppose when that second goal went in, it was just like, oh, back to this again. Back to this. I thought we were over that. Like, you know,
I mean, that would
yeah.
have been a statement win.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's amazing how much landed on that match in that sense. If we got that over the line, going into this run, it's quite interesting all of a sudden.
Yeah, and
now it's still in the balance, whether they take it positively or negatively. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, it just felt, Mudryk scoring against Arsenal, Cole Palmer with the Thierry Henry celebration. It just all felt like we had all the bragging rights. Would come out of this game. Chelsea fans would be happy on Twitter and all. We would at least get one back on Arsenal because we haven't beaten them since 2019. I think the last time we beat them was at the Emirates and Tammy Abraham scored. So again, like it's been a long time we've actually got a game. I don't even remember the last time we beat them at Stamford Bridge. I don't remember. I think it might have been under Maurizio Sarri, and then I think maybe I don't know who.
Sarri, exactly.
It is, yeah, it is because he said, yeah,
they've beaten us twice at Stamford Bridge. Twice.
Yeah, they always got lucky even when we were probably, we would argue, better than them. They always seem to get lucky. Yeah. At Stamford Bridge for some reason.
Yeah.
I remember beating them 6-0, and those days tables are turning. Unfortunately.
And I suppose it's just that realization, like they've really got one over us. It's sort of like City as well. Like I go into that fixture just expecting a loss because they've just beaten us over so many years. I think only under Thomas Tuchel where we beat them 2 or 3 times that season.
We beat them in the most important one, mate. So
yeah, yeah. But apart from that, I just again, I think it was just a moment of deflation, and then soon after, like Peter said, that Nketiah chance, I was just thinking, oh God, here we go again. And I honestly thought Nketiah was going to score that goal. I really did because. He's another one who plays really well against Chelsea every time he seems to come up against us lately. And I almost wanted to. I'll admit, I almost wanted to go on like a betting channel, just put on £1, just to get some sort of relief from it because you almost saw it coming. You saw it coming, and you guys can't say any different. You guys probably thought, you know what, we can lose this now. We can lose this, and with the substitutions that came on, I think Pochettino doesn't deserve any blame for them because, those substitutions were already pre-planned, and as you can see, the minutes of they came on, it was just literally after the action of play. So Reece James and Noni Madueke coming on, I think those were already planned before the actual goal, and it just seemed like the goal went in, and then obviously the subs were activated as the ball had went out of play already. So I wouldn't blame Pochettino for those subs. I thought we did try go get a third, but it was like in the very, very last minute of added time, and at that point the game was deaded off and killed. So at full time, it was just a bit of like you didn't want Arsenal to have any bragging rights from this game because they really didn't deserve a result. But I will say this, and I called it the start of the season. I think they will be champions, and they've shown me another reason why I see them as my favourites to be Premier League champions because I just don't think City look as strong as they did last season, especially with De Bruyne out. But then City always do this where in December, January, February they really turn it on. So. Hopefully,
I want to tell the viewers quite a funny story, including yourself, Peter. Tem and Tom, who are normally in the show, I made a bet with them about this time last year when Man City were miles behind Arsenal. I said City will win the league, and I betted. I donated the money to charity. I'm not, I'm not one to I'm not going to make my friends pay, but it's just, I think Man City, they do always come good. And that's the way it is. But look, we're going to have to move on swiftly. I'm going to extend it just by 10, 15 minutes because there's a few more things we want to go through. One of which is the next match, right? So we're going into this, Brentford at home, a tough fixture. They beat us last season at home. I don't think that was that difficult. We lost most games at home, but they're a good side. They're not quite ticking this season yet. Obviously, Tony, their talisman, is on a ban until January. Hopefully, he'll be joining us after. But at the moment, he's on a ban. They've started okay, but it's a match that, off the back of that one, on Saturday, if we can perform like that, that's really is a match that we need. I think with the run of games we've got, we need the 3 points. What do you reckon, Peter, on Saturday? I think it's Saturday 12:30 kickoff. If I'm right, yeah,
early kickoff.
Yeah, early kickoff. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you?
So I feel if we could play anywhere near the level we played against Arsenal, I think Brentford game is a game that we could pick up a result. Even though I still have some, would I say, a feeling or a superstition about the 12:30 kickoff that any big team doesn't win in the early kickoff on Saturday. But then Liverpool have proved that wrong this last weekend. Tottenham Hotspur proved that wrong against Luton. I think that was last 2 weeks. So I think Chelsea shouldn't be an exception come this Saturday.
Yeah, and what do you reckon there for Tem as well? Like, it's a tough fixture coming up, and I'll touch briefly. I don't think we will have time to go through each individual position, but there are obviously going to be probably the odd change to that one. I think that was very much set up against Arsenal rather than for Chelsea, if that makes sense. And obviously, I think we'll want to take the game to Brentford as the home team. How do you anticipate the starting 11 to look, if any, different to last Saturday?
So I think it'll be pretty much most of the same. I think what we'll see a difference is maybe a recognised striker. We might see Jackson return to that starting 11. I think Mudryk will probably. I wouldn't like him to be dropped, but I think that's probably what's going to be the more likely option of Mudryk. If I was to say out of the 3 or 4 options to be dropped, it'll most likely be Mudryk, and to be dropped, Jackson back into the 11. And yeah, I think the majority remains the same. I think Disasi is still out as far as we know. Chalobah still injured. Chukwuemeka, let me just show you guys as well, or we can quickly see. So obviously our injury list is looking a bit like this. So yeah, I think it's probably going to be the same unless we get any new injury news from Pochettino. So I don't see any difference. What do you think, Peter?
Yeah, I don't see much difference too. I think the defense will sort themselves. I don't expect Reece James to start this coming weekend. I think it will be too soon for him to start the game, considering the knee injury that he just had recently. So the back line picked itself, and I think the midfield also picked itself because those three are very durable players, Caicedo and Gallagher. So just as Tem said, it will be harsh to drop Modric, but I think it will be dropped for Jackson. The front row of Sterling, Palmer, and Jackson.
Yeah, I think it'll just be interesting whether they go with, and also with the clog up of fixtures, is there any need to rotate? I mean, ultimately, we're not in Europe, so we're not in the Champions League or the Europa League or even the Conference League, so we don't necessarily need to. I mean, these are professional footballers. We don't necessarily need to have a too much rotation, and I think that's something that people do forget with this run of games. A lot of the teams we're playing are in Europe, so they have the clog up of games. I'm not saying this is going to necessarily affect us well, but if you wanted to have this run of games, you'd rather have it now than in April, because a lot of those teams would be out of those competitions by then. They would have the rest time, and they would need the points a lot more as well. Be a lot more pressure on the points. So if you are going to pick a time to have it, you'd probably have it around now, especially with a relatively new team. So I think in our position, it's not the worst thing that can happen. I think out of the games that we've got, this one's probably the one that you would most put your car on getting the 3 points, if you like. This is the one that we would most like to get the 3 points. But yeah, I mean, I think there's certain players within that team that played, like Cucurella, for example, who has to retain his place regardless of who comes back from injury. It's been a long time coming for that guy, but I will like to shout him out. I thought I've been a massive critic of Cucurella, to be honest, for my sins.
I think we'll have been a massive critics of him.
Yeah. But I think I think he probably could have left in the summer. I really do think that. I'm sure there was a little bit of interest. I think Newcastle wanted him, or
Man United was close.
Man United
was in the mix too.
Yeah, and for whatever reason, he said, "No, I want to fight for my place." Bearing in mind, Chilwell was made. He signed a contract, didn't he, fairly recently, and stuff like that. So, and he's obviously vice captain, I think, as well. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got the competition ahead of him is pretty fierce, but you have to respect him for that. And when he's got the opportunity, especially when he was at right back. When he first came into the team recently, having just sat on the bench basically, and now finally been moved to his left side. And I just thought on Saturday it was without a doubt his best performance for Chelsea, in my opinion. Because you're never going to get tested against many more better players than Saka in this league.
His best performance in a Chelsea shirt was against Dortmund at Stamford Bridge last season.
Yeah, that's true. Dortmund, yeah. It's weird because in the big games he seems to have this ability to turn up, and then sometimes in the smaller games he doesn't. Because I think he played against. Actually, I might be wrong. Actually, he probably did, but he played against Real Madrid in one of the matches, didn't he, last year?
Yeah,
but I think he was actually okay, and he was in a. It wasn't in the 3 or something. I mean, he was out of position, but he was actually okay. The thing is, I had last season. I think because sometimes if you believe a player isn't quite up to it, when they make a mistake, you're almost like, yeah, I told you so. It's that kind of mentality. You almost look for the mistake, look at him. Look, where was it? Whereas other players are making the mistakes. So yeah, that's kind of the way it is. But big kudos to him, as they say.
And can I just add to that? I think I was thinking about it to myself, and he a lot reminds me of David Luiz in terms of just the defending style. I think
and his hair.
He is very crazy in that sense. Yeah, and his hair. He's just very crazy in that sense of he's almost playing with a lot of adrenaline, if you know what I mean. It doesn't seem cool, calm, and collected. It's like it's all in or nothing. And I suppose one player we saw who was all in or nothing was Azpilicueta, but he was just so brilliant 1v1. He just never got beaten. And I think with Cucurella, he just leaves that margin for, if it's not 100% perfect, the player has a very good chance of getting the best of him. And because he's not so quick in the recovery pace, he's not so tall, not so physical, he kind of has to play with that aggression, but sometimes it can let him down because, like I say, he lacks the physical attributes of a great defender, if you know what I mean. So maybe sometimes going into those challenges isn't the best of what he needs to do in that moment. So yeah, it was just daunted to me when I thought of David Luiz when he first came. We used to see him go into silly challenges and whatnot, but then he would have a great game at the same time, if you know what I mean. Like he would have one brain fart moment, but he would still have a 9 out of 10 game because he would bring the ball out calmly out of defense and make some really good challenges, play a 60-yard pass or whatnot. And I think Cucurella has got a bit about him about that, but not in terms of dribbling, but he's got a very good fizz pass on it. I think he's a good player who can advance the ball when he wants to, and also be very good defensively when he wants to be. Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, Peter, unless you've got anything to add.
Going forward, I think as much as the taxes are important in the game, I think we really, really, really need the luck of the game to be on our side too, because especially in the big games, the first match of the season against Liverpool, I felt so far that has been our best game of the season.
Yeah.
I think we were not lucky in that game. Yesterday, against Arsenal too, I felt we were not lucky. And some games that we played this season, I
Yeah,
think the luck hasn't been on our side this season. So going forward, I really wish we had the luck of the football gods.
I think the thing is, Arsenal fans would argue that we were really lucky yesterday because we scored a goal from Mudryk that he didn't mean, and a penalty that they would argue wasn't a penalty, which we've obviously touched upon. But I think, like my opinion is, you make your own luck basically, and Arsenal have been, if that makes sense, and Arsenal have been consistently good over the last 12 months, and they've that Sanchez, yes, it gave them, you could argue Sanchez threw the game away, but Arsenal still a lot to do at that point. But they just knew you make your own luck, and the players make the mistakes when you want them to. I mean, it's a funny old game, football, isn't it? Let's face it, that happens. I mean, how is it that you can teach players how to kick balls, how to do all this stuff, but when one player makes a mistake and they get one goal, but you can see everything goes out the window within a minute. But again, that's a sign of a great team, like Tem says, to be able to capitalize, but also to be able to see out games and that sort of stuff. Tem, is there anything else you want us to cover on this one, or are we all?
Yeah, I think that's all. I just think the scoreline predictions is probably the last thing, and I think that's it for this week.
Peter, I'll go with you first as the guest. It would only be fair. So scoreline prediction: Chelsea v Brentford, 12:30 on Saturday. A little bit about how you think the game's going to go and the score prediction.
Yeah, I think it will be a little bit different with the game. To be a little different as the game against Arsenal, but then I still expect Chelsea to cruise to a 2-0 victory.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair enough. I'll go with you, Tim.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tough game. I'm going to go with a 2-1 Chelsea.
2-1 Chelsea. Okay. I'm thinking positive because I've had a couple of days to digest the Saturday. I'm going to go a bit of a freak result like Brentford did to us a few years ago.
Yeah.
4-1 Chelsea. I don't know why. I just got this feeling that we are due this bounce. Something. It's got to give. Something's got to give, right, at some point. So I'm going to go 4-1 Chelsea. It's not. I wouldn't advise that you put that on as a bet because you probably won't win. But I'm a gambler. I'm a risk taker, and that's just the way I think. So. Thanks for everyone who's been watching us live. Thanks for everyone who's been commenting and everything like that. A special thanks to Peter who stepped in at a very last minute as Tom couldn't be here today. Thank you so much, Peter, and we hope to have you on the show again very soon, as and when you can. Thanks to TKS TV who's been streaming live on their TV channel, and go to TKS TKS.TV, TKSTV.co.uk, I think it is, to see it. I'll put the link in the description, and up the Chelsea, and see you next week.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.